Okay guys, so continuation from the last video. So again, if this is the keyword if has to be a small I, otherwise it won't work. But again, with your text editors, your IDEs, you're on VS Code, you're on Sublime Text, wherever you are, it should change. The color should change. It should light up as we've been saying. 2 is greater than 3. Do what's indented here. The code here belongs to this if. And we know that because of the indent, because of the spaces here. Now, to drive that point home, I'm going to uncomment this, right? This notice is not, it's not part of the indent. Now, I'm removing this from the indent, right? This is just normal code, that how we would code, how we've been coding the whole time. It's just normal code, right? At the beginning of where we start coding. It's not starting 4 blocks in. It's not coming after a colon. It's not part of this indent, right? And what I'm going to do is I'm going to make this condition false, right? So is 2 greater than 3? It's not. This is a false condition. None of what's part of this false conditions question should print, but this will print because this has got nothing to do with this if statement. This is out of the if statement's indent, sorry. It's out of the if statement's scope. The if statement scope is what is indented, right? So if I run this, as much as this condition is false, the stuff that have to do with it won't print because it's false, and this stuff will only print if the condition is true. This will because it's out of the indent. So this will print regardless, irrespective of whether this is true or false. This condition, this stuff prints, this will print. This is me continuing with my code after my if statement. So I've made an if statement, I've made a condition, and then I'm coding 10 lines later, 50 lines later, or even 1 line later after my if statement. This has got nothing to do with the if statement. Okay. Now, those of you that have moved far ahead will know that I can have an if statement, and then we can have, typically what goes with it is an else statement. So I've said if 2 is greater than 3, do this, right? Otherwise means if it's not greater than 2. So, if it's not greater than 3. So if 2 is not greater than 3, if that's the case, if the case is that 2 is not greater than 3, do this then. Okay. 2 is not greater than 3. And then let's maybe print something else. Okay, let's not print let's print Queen Elizabeth, right? Like that. So our code, we've written a whole lot of code up here. We come down, and then when we here, we are asking Python if 2 is greater than 3. If it is, do this. If it's not, do this. So if I run this code now, what should I get? So first things first, the first thing that happens with an if statement is we read the if statement's condition, the first line of it. So if else go together, but there can never be an else if there was not an if somewhere to start with. There must have first been an if somewhere. There must have been first the first condition for us to check in order for us to get here, right? So if 2 is greater than 3, print this. If it's not greater than 3, print this. So answer the question for yourselves, guys. Is 2 greater than 3? It's not, so we ignore all of this. If it's not, we've got an else block to say, okay, this else goes with this if, else goes with if. They go hand in hand. There can't be an else without an if. Else, print this. So let's run this and see what happens. And obviously, we're going to print what's in the else, because why? 2 is not greater than 3. Okay. There is, however, one more condition, or one more sort of logic to this. Okay. There is what we call an else if, like this. Now, the difference between else if and else is this. If 2 is greater than 3, print me this. Okay, so that will never change. That will always be that. But let's say there's sort of an in-between condition I want to check before I print 2 is not greater than 3. So that's a mouthful. Let me explain what I mean by that. Let's say I want to check if 2 is greater than 3. Ne? But if it's not greater than 3, I want to print the stuff it's not greater than 3. But before I print that it's not greater than 3, maybe there's one more condition I want to check, or 2 more. So you can have a lot of alif blocks. Ne? You can have alifs until you blue in the face. You can have 30 alifs. Alif, 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 alif. There may be a lot of conditions. Now, what I'll do, ne? Let's do this. Let us okay, you know what? Let's just keep it like that. And then let's keep 1 alif, okay? So for your alif, you would have to write, before we check for this else, what else do you want to check for? So if 2 is greater than 3, print this. Okay, well, it's not greater than 3. Else if let's say if 2 is less than 3, right? Print 2. I'm going to make you guys a better example now. This example is not going to be, it's not going to drive the point home well, but just to show you that 2 is less than 3, else print the stuff that's in the else block. So again, notice all the indents. The indents belong to the question you asked. So let's look at what's happening here. If 2 is greater than 3, print this. It's not. The next thing the code is going to do, it's going to run to your alif statement. Okay, you've got another condition that you want me to check before we get to the else. Else, if 3 is greater than 2, print 2 is less than 3, right? Otherwise, print the stuff that's in the else. So if we run this, we're going to get 2 is less than 3 because it comes here. This is false. Then your if happens to be true. So it stops right here, prints this, breaks out of this whole thing. So comes now to your code. So let's say print, we are out of the if statement, or if clause, let's say. So people will call this an if statement, if clause, but you're out of this whole thing. As soon as it finds a true condition, it will do what's in there and then get out. So it won't come to this else anymore. 2 is less than 3 was part of the alif. It won't print this. It won't print Queen Elizabeth and 2 is not greater than 3 because this condition happened to be true. So let me make another example, right? Let me make another example where you can properly see this. So let's say, okay, so let's have 3 variables. And then with this, we will also, let's have this variable equal 100. My num equals 200. And then my, I don't know, age equals the biggest number. Okay, cool. Now we've got 3 numbers going on here, ne? So let's do an if. So let's go if my var, right? So my var, notice is 100, right? Is greater than my num, correct? What do we want to print? Let's print hello, okay? So again, you can do anything in this print thing. Let's print hello, okay? Else, let's start with just the else, print the word no. Now let's quickly answer this for ourselves. My var is 100, my num is 200. You're asking me if 100 is bigger than 200. It's not, so we're not doing this. You're coming to the else, print no. So let's make sure that that works. Okay, so no, great. But let's say now I want to introduce another condition before we get to this else. So let's say in my code, this my age variable is also important, but the first thing I need to do is first check that my variable is is greater or not greater than my number. Né? So whatever I'm coding, first, the first condition, the first most important condition, and it matters the order you put these things in. The first most important condition is my variable greater than my number? Print hello. That's the first thing you need to check for whatever program you're solving, for whatever the task it is you're doing. What's important to check first is that my variable is bigger than my number. Okay, it's not. Then let's say the next thing you need to check. So your program, whatever it is you're coding, and again, we're going to get onto like we're going to solve real problems when we build games and stuff. The next thing I need to check is if this is not the case, the next thing of importance to me, let's say, is this my age variable. I then need to check my age, let's say, is equal to my var. Let's just, I'm really just making these things up, right? Then maybe we want to print A, B, C, D, E, F, G. And then if both of these things are not true, I'm happy to print no. There's nothing else I care about checking. I don't care about anything else. So what's important to me in order is my variable greater than my number? If that's not the case, come here. This is the next else if, or else if this is not the case, is this the case? So I could check this however I want. It doesn't have to be equal to. I could check this. I could check smaller than, whatever, equal to. If that's the case, do this block of code. If both of these things are not the code, are not the case, print me the word no. So the answer is no here. The answer is no here because my age doesn't equal my var. That's my age, that's my var. So we're going to get no again. So let's just run it. So we get no again because not true, not true. And you told me that if both these things are not true, else the last resort, the last thing you want, the last thing you care about, you don't care about anything else now. After we've checked these two things, tell me no, I'm done checking the things that are important to me based on whatever it is I'm solving. So let's throw in these different ones now. Okay, so again, remember I told you, so this evaluates to a true or false. Remember I kept saying, so if the answer is true, this happens. If the answer is false, it leaves this, comes to the next one. Then this evaluates to a true or false. So this essentially, after it evaluates, will say something in the back end. Like if you can think about what's going on behind the scenes, will either say this or this after it checks the condition, right? So let's just make it again. So again, this is a question. Remember how we started the last video? You're asking a question first to Python. Then Python says true or false. If it comes to true, we print hello. If it comes to false, we leave this. Do you have an else if? Yes, you do. Right? Let's ask the else if statement. True or false? True, we do this. We break out of this whole thing. We carry on with our lives. False, do you have another aleph? You could have another aleph. Maybe there's something, maybe something else is important to you after that, right? Maybe you then want to check if my age, let's do something like this. So if my age equals this number, let's take this number, copy this number, paste. So what have I done now? Okay, what would this evaluate to now? Let's print bingo. I'll print no. Okay, so there's some interesting things that we've just done now. My var, my number, false. My age, my var, false. My age equals this number. Okay, well, what is my age? My age is this number. And I'm saying, does my age equal this number? Print bingo. So surely we should stop here, right? Because this condition is now true. So your conditions, you've put them in order of importance for me. This one is your third most important thing you care about. If we run this, we should print bingo. We break out of this whole thing. We don't print anything else. We don't check anything else. We carry on with our lives. So let me now print, not inside my indent or anything, out of if clause. Like that. So we should print, get it right, guys, bingo. And we print out of if clause because this print has nothing to do with any of this if nonsense that's going on here. It's not indented with any of these things. An indent, remember, is tab 4 spaces. It's not there. Had I kept this here, okay, let me just run this quickly. And you see bingo out of if clause.